world which is so driven by technology, I just want to do some mic checks. Old days, we used to get on stage and say mic 1, 2, 3, check. Nowadays, we get on the stage, which is virtual, and ask, can you see my screen? Can you hear me? So folks, if I get knocked off, because internet can be pretty unstable, especially when you have kids doing virtual school at the same time as we are trying to work, I will dial back, okay? So don't worry, I will be back in case the connection snaps. The next couple of minutes that we are together, I will share some of my experiences and some of my reflections as someone who has been working in the corporate setup, been building company-wide DNA around process excellence, using frameworks like Lean Six Sigma, design thinking, change management, and working internally as an HR and capability development coach to a lot of leaders. This particular program and this particular agenda is very close to my heart. And I must make a disclaimer that I am an amateur in this space. And thank you so much, CSRBOX and the other organizers who have put this together and given us an opportunity to come and share our learnings. With all humility, I will get into some of our reflections and some of our learning points as we went through working with a lot of passionate people over the years to make a difference to somebody's life. And I must say it's easier said than done, because in corporate setups, we are so used to working through the goals and structure and the business objectives of getting things done and living from quarter to quarter, seeing some of the developments as well as impact stories of what we collectively as an organization and I individually as a person has learned has only made me richer, much more than I have ever been working for almost 2 decades within the corporate setup of our environment. So with that, this talk is all about reflecting on our insights and learnings, but more importantly, it's also an opportunity for you to ask questions and get clarifications. I'll continue to try my best to tackle any reflections you have. So please use the chat window extensively as you go through this talk with me. I would definitely try and pick some of those. So I'll keep going through the chat window as I keep progressing through my pages. These pages are more about a pivotal point so that we all collectively learn together. But at any point in time, if you feel there is something that would want a Q&A kind of setup, then just remember the last 10 to 15 minutes we will keep for allowing all of you to ask a couple of questions. I do see some of my colleagues from Genpact also on this panel with me. So I do have a bunch of experts who know this sector far better than I do. I am a passionate change maker. And I'm driven by the principles of human-centered innovation. So anytime you ask me a technical question, I will bank on Sheetal and Smita, who are there from Genpact with me, and we'll probably give you answers that will give you or inspire you to pick up an action that can make a difference from tomorrow in the way you lead change on the ground. So with that, let me jump into something that I've been reading and reflecting on with the team in Genpact. And in the last 5 to 10 years, if you see our journey as citizens, I think a lot has changed in our world. With the pandemic coming in, a lot of reflection points and challenges have also emerged in our world. But most importantly, something that caught my fascination as a team was sharing some stats with me is the fact that this country has more than 3 million NGOs. And it's amazing that the intention to make a difference is translating into some brave people stepping up and saying, I want to make an action to bring change in somebody's life. And it's pretty inspiring when you look at these stats of the number of NGOs this country has, to the number of government hospitals we have, to the number of schools we have, and to the number of police coverage we have from a ratio coverage standpoint. And it's interesting, which means that around us, India should be vibrant with change in our society for good, right? Because it is an amazing uprising of human action, which is non-governmental in nature, to do something that is meaningful to people on the ground. Look at these stats, it makes you wonder what's changing around you. And then I come across another set of stats and I thought, it's also pivotal for us to reflect on this stat, because many of you belong to corporates and NGOs, and we work together constantly to see how do we do things better every time we go out together. There is enough research and stats and stories and published articles on why NGOs are not able to scale or even achieve the difference that they started with. And particularly what is telling is the fact that most of the times that the NGOs struggle to scale and make that initial vision, which was based on the bravado of select few, is not able to scale and bring a change to somebody's life, is so basic. It's so simple. So it's all about execution. It's all about measurement. It's all about strengthening the core operations of the non-government organization. And in our corporate experience, we've seen so many times some of these challenges come to life, and we've tackled them with our own frameworks and techniques. And it gives me immense pride, with a lot of humility, to say that when 5 years back, we started the Genpact Social Impact Fellowship program, our intention was this: that how do we really build on the strengths of the development sector and merge with them some of the powerful operational excellence framework to create sustainable difference to the life of people. And when we started this journey, we didn't know where we'll land. But as I look back the last couple of years that I have been very closely associated as a business person for a social agenda, this slide is such an amazing reflection. We've done more than 100 projects. We've worked with 67 NGOs in the last 5 years. 22 million lives have been impacted by just making sure simple things are consistently delivered each time, every time, and the way we precisely expect it to work. And as I think about it, in the larger macro space of how NGOs make a difference and how corporates and NGOs can partner together, and what are those little things and big things that one could do, the question always emerges in my mind to say, what does it take to scale social impact? And what I'm going to share with you are really 5 insights and 5 stories of things that seem to work with us as we went down the journey of making the fellowship program come to life with Genpact's partnership with NGOs that we chose. And our partners have been a source of huge inspiration and great partnership in terms of making a difference. But the most important thing and the most humbling thing in all of this journey has been the fact that when bright minds come together, big changes can happen. And they don't need huge, dramatic, massive, investments of money and effort. What it takes are 5 simple actions. If you do them every day, consistently, you will probably get better results out of your effort and money that you put in this space. So, as a practitioner of design thinking, as a collaborative problem solver, I always say this at the beginning of every talk I give, is none of the things that I share with you is going to be rocket science. You will also realize that there are very simple actions and we all intuitively do that. But at times, due to the pressure of the results or pressure of the lack of resources, we tend to ignore and take a shortcut. So my reflections and my stories are more about practical implications of doing the right things in the right way. But in no means do I mean to say that this is an exhaustive list. So there could be 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th different insight as well. And I would love to learn if somebody would like to share in the chat as we go through these 5 insights as to what it has taken for them to really make a difference on the ground. But as we jump deeper into the 5 stories, let me go instantly into my first insight. And this one is about value lies in the eyes of the beneficiary. We've all heard this statement, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. And I want to tweak it, replace value, replace beholder with beneficiary. And what changes, not just perception and assumption, what changes is an inherent desire to really connect with the people who are at the center of the problem you're trying to solve. I can see there is an internet message to me. Can you all still hear me? You can do a thumbs up. My co-panelists, if you can do that, then I'll know that you can still hear me.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay. My
Yes.
laptop just said that your internet is unstable. Okay. So on that sort of praying that my connection doesn't fall, let me proceed. So as I think about value and as I think about what do we mean by value, value is always about what matters to the people, to those who get the output of the process, of the action, of the bunch of activities that we are trying to take. And there's a lovely definition I came across a couple of years back, which was about compassion. It said compassion is a combination of empathy and action. And to me personally, our value creation engine, which is what each one of us does every day to bring social change around us, is about a series of connected actions, activities, tasks, processes, you name it, or steps that we follow to create value for people who are the consumer of the output it is created from this process. And I really want you to reflect on this concept of value by using this example of a fruit. We all eat fruits, right? All of us have eaten an orange. Anyone who's not eaten an orange can ask somebody else what an orange is. But think about any fruit then in your mind and say, when you eat a fruit, you typically will peel the fruit and you will eat what is inside, after removing the peel. So when you peel the orange out, you are actually removing the fruit inside and consuming it. Now, from the concept of value, what is inside the fruit or covered by the peel is what really that matters, right? That's what we are consuming. But think about it. Is the skin of the orange such a non-value add, or is it really value enabling? None of us, I guarantee, is going to buy a pack of oranges if somebody was to remove its skin and give you only the individual flakes inside, right? We will be like, oh no, we can't eat it. this doesn't seem okay to us. So apply this concept back to the processes, the actions that you take every day, and ask yourself, every action that you take, is it value adding? Is it non-value adding? But be very mindful of any step that you decide to eliminate or remove completely. Is it value enabling? Because many of us oversee value enabling steps and just go after efficiency and forget that creating a difference in somebody's life is not just about our assumptions of what is value adding and what is not value adding. It is about digging deeper and really understanding the emotions that matter. Margaret Mead, she's an American cultural anthropologist, and she said a statement, and it's very telling, and I want to reflect on this statement with each one of you as you think about your own agendas to make a difference. Small, big, any of them. What people say, what people do, and what people say they do are entirely different things. So when you go down the journey of understanding value from the eyes and the aspirations of people who are at the center of that particular process, make sure you take a 360-degree views of what people are saying, what people are thinking, but what are they doing? And how do they feel about what they're doing every day? And draw your inspiration from their needs and your insights from the aspect of saying, what is it that I have learned about this process, this situation, this challenge that truly tells me or inspires me to explore a new way of doing something? And when you start looking at every process from the lens of, what matters to people, you start realizing, contrasting what people do, which is an action, versus what is going on in their mind in terms of their thoughts and feelings, is something that when you understand fully, you create systems, you create processes that make fundamental difference to how solutions come to life. And I'll give you an example, rather a story from one of the fellows program that I was mentoring. And this particular project was all about empowering women farmer. And the NGO was focused on rural livelihood. And this particular engagement was all about come and look at our supply chain post, the harvest has happened, because we want to make sure that our process is optimized and we reduce wastage from the process. Now, think about it. This particular NGO is driven by improving the livelihood of the farmers. And they're like, okay, there must be something wrong with the way we run the process or the people run this process. And let's just go and reduce wastage. And we did the study, right? We studied. There was immense opportunities in terms of fixing how we can reduce waste across the value chain. But here's what was surprising. As we went down to do our field study, as we started interviewing the farmers, as we started observing the actions across the value chain of these multiple tasks that were getting done, from the point the supplier or the farmer was producing to the time the buyer was consuming or buying their product, there were multiple interesting reflections. And one of the biggest reflections that we came across when we started interacting with people on the ground is this, that the lack of awareness of the techniques of how to follow or do simple tasks that can improve their production output, that could improve or reduce the waste in packaging and collecting their seeds, in the way they were driving distribution, in the way they were sorting and cleaning. There were little things. But the most telling point was this, that it was less about process getting optimized in terms of how these tasks are getting done. It was a lot more about people being trained and equipped to understand what they could do within their control to make all the difference. So next time you're mapping a process to get something done, make sure you ask and you listen and you go for it and understand who are the people at the core of this process. What is the task which is value adding and value enabling? Are you making sure that the handoffs between people are not causing the leakage in the value you're creating for those people? And then constantly look for the emotional drivers of what are their aspirations, what are the frustrations, and what are the delights when it comes to daily tackling a task that has to be done. And what seems obvious, don't interpret it is the most obvious thing. Because a lot of people would think, listen, go fix your process, optimize it, and probably the farmers will get better money for what they sell. The fact is, how much did you focus on upskilling and making sure the farmer understands what they need to do every day could make a huge difference in what really could be done differently. That brings me to the second insight. And this is another one, which is one of my favorites. GE taught us what gets measured gets improved. And this is a very interesting one. It's like, when we don't get to know every day how good or bad we are, everything seems nice. It's like Alice in Wonderland. So when Alice asked which road should I take to get out of this place, the answer she got was, where do you want to be? And she said, I don't know. And the response then was, it doesn't matter which road you took. And as we progress as corporates, as NGOs, to make a difference to the beneficiary's life, and we want to do something better than what it was happening in the past, it is so essential to measure what is it that we want to change. And when you're measuring, it is not enough to measure the output. Going back to my earlier example, as you think about the value chain from harvesting to the time the buyer bought the seeds, you realize that making sure you measure the input and the output is important. But eventually, it's not just enough if you measure the input and the output. You have to also measure collectively what is the overall impact or outcome that you are trying to drive in terms of making a difference to somebody's life. And one important reflection that we had, the 100+ projects that we did with our fellows in GSIF, with the 60+ NGOs that we work with, 40% of them were all focused on setting up the right measurement system, making sure that there is transparency and visibility to the health of the process that was being followed, and making sure that that particular action, when measured, if was not meeting the thresholds of performance, somebody stepped in and said, what can we do to make it better? Not after, as we go through the process. It's like, you have to write one final exam in every class, right? But the teachers do have to do small and short assessments throughout the year to just check whether the child is learning the concepts or not. Because what you don't want to afford is one full year wasted after the child fails the final exam. And making sure you measure little actions and making sure that you understand, you measure the right things and link them to the outcome that matters is probably going to give you better results than just saying, can I have a technology solution to make this process more optimized? I think the first step on any process excellence journey is to first baseline. And baselining at a fundamental level means measure what matters and what actions are being taken by the people. And in all of our experiences, as I shared, the majority of them were in this space. Two key stories that stood out in my mind as we went through the journey. We put a performance measurement system for the employees of an NGO, and it created a 2x impact in improving learning outcome for the government schools these volunteers and program managers within the NGO were working with. We went ahead and worked with an NGO which was all about girl-child empowerment. And with this, they engaged with us and they said, we want you to put a measurement system that can help us understand the effectiveness of our integration program. And going through the journey, while there were many more things that we discovered and we learned, one of the biggest thing was this: because we were measuring the right actions by the right people, we were able to accelerate by 5 times the outreach to the end consumer that we wanted to reach. And in the process, those girl icons that were selected impacted 1 lakh lives. So, through just purely making sure that you measure the right things, create dashboards of visibility, and inspire decisions backed by data, we were able to impact 10 million lives. And I'm sharing that not because this is a great number to share, but because I'm telling you a simple action of every day asking yourself, how good were we yesterday in doing this task? And the moment you start reflecting on how good we were yesterday on doing this task and link it to first do this, I am creating value enablers that will make sure that my ultimate outcome of changing somebody's life comes true. That brings me to my third insight. And this one is another fun one. I'm sure many of us have heard about an iceberg concept. It's about saying, it's a mass of ice floating on the oceans, and you can only see the top of the iceberg. People say 80% of the iceberg is submerged in the water. So what happens is many of us react to the symptoms. So when you go to a doctor and you have fever, what does the doctor do? The doctor is going to either prescribe you some tests, ask you a couple of questions, figure out what is it that is causing this. It is all about when you make a change, don't be deceived by what you see. Margaret Mead, she said, what people say, what people do, what people say they do are 3 different things. And if you only focus your improvement initiatives, your scale up of operations from what you see, there is a fundamental defect in how we are trying to scale our operations. So ask yourself why. And there's a very interesting story here. We worked with an NGO, which was all about saying, can you come and improve our teacher motivation? Because our teachers are spending just 2.5 hours every day on doing what we expect them to do. So clearly there is a reason they are not motivated enough, and they're not doing what is expected to be done. And here's what we did. We followed the root cause analysis approach, and we said, why is it that we are not able to get the result we want to? And you'll be surprised to know that when we dug deeper and we started asking, what is it that's not working? What is it from technology standpoint, process standpoint, people standpoint, method standpoint, program standpoint? What is it that is causing this particular effect? There's a very, very simple technique which is called fishbone diagram or an Ishikawa. Again, don't get overwhelmed by the words I'm using in terms of the technique. The spirit of this technique is make sure you understand the root causes that cause the teachers not to be able to spend enough hours. And you'll be surprised, our biggest root cause was all about teachers spending majority of their time doing administrative tasks and non-teaching activities. So it was not as if the teachers were not doing what they were supposed to do. It seems there was a unwritten rule about what they need to do, which left them with just 2 hours of time to do what they were actually intentionally getting paid for. And when we did this, another technique we used was 5 whys. Many of us would have heard it. It's basically continue to ask why till you reach the root cause or the real cause of why this symptom is happening. So teachers were spending less teaching hours in school, but when we dug deeper, we were told teachers don't have enough time. And okay, so they're busy because they're doing non-teaching activities. And why is the teacher doing non-teaching activity? Because the school principal is asking them to do those tasks. Now, why is it that the school principal is asking them? Because somewhere, the translation of what needs to get done and who needs to do it gets transferred unconsciously and sometimes intentionally by folks on the wrong. That if we want to change the business outcome, which is improving the effectiveness of the teachers to make a difference to the students' life, it is not about going after motivation of teachers. It is actually going after figuring out who will do the admin work in the school so that teachers are spared their time to do what really matters. That brings me to the fourth insight of mine. And this is an interesting work. I always say that I am Murphy's favorite child. Everything that can go wrong will always go wrong with the programs that I'm supporting. And don't get me wrong, I have been reasonably successful in doing what I do in my day job. But one of the learnings that I've had by doing what I do every day is that anything that can possibly go wrong will go wrong and will affect your ability to scale and get results for the people who matter. And these two techniques, again, we use extensively. Don't get bogged. They're pretty simple techniques, but used well, they help you prepare. The first technique is failure mode effect analysis. And the second one is called, many of us do this very intuitively, but when you do it as a part of an intentional improvement journey, it is about saying that when you set up a measurement system, when you're designing and figuring out how will this program become more effective for its end beneficiaries, you ask yourself just before the launch, what can go wrong? And when you ask what can go wrong, it will help you determine opportunities that you can proactively prepare for. This particular technique is very interesting. We were working with this NGO and we were called in to improve the effectiveness of the training program that was being administered to the fellows that were onboarded by this NGO to carry their message in rural parts of the country. And obviously, we were going by the earlier insights, right? So we were understanding the value from the eyes of those fellows. We were going deeper and figuring out what is getting measured, what's the current performance, how good it is, how bad it is. We were doing 5 whys and we were trying to figure out, okay, why is it that this doesn't work? Why is it that that doesn't work? And as we were going through, we worked with the team and we said, let's rebuild certain aspects where we discovered that the training program could be done differently or better for the learning of the fellows that had to go through this program. And one of the interesting things we realized is this, that we made a great curriculum and we said, okay, now let's go ahead and launch it because we reworked the areas where people were struggling. We added knowledge areas in the content and the curriculum, which made the content really, really strong. We created material that was made to meet the learning needs of the fellows who were joining. And we were all gung-ho because we were like, okay, if we train them right, one time, they will be able to pick this collateral and knowledge and take it to the right people and make sure that our business outcome of driving the core social message that these fellows had to take to rural parts of the country, that goes through. And you will be amazed. We had the best program, but one of the failure mode effect analysis conversation led us to reflect that one way this particular program will fail is participation and attendance of the fellows. And, and it's quite interesting that before we stepped in to work with this NGO, their attendance was 30% of the whole batch. And what we started doing was we started asking, we said, okay, we fixed your curriculum, but if you want results, you want to make sure at least 90% of your participants go through the material that we have put together with you to teach them. And what we realized was this, that had we not taken care of the fact that attendance will be an issue, and people think that, listen, these students or these fellows come from the most remote parts of this country, and we're giving them monetary benefit to be part of our fellowship program and all of those good things. They will just turn up. The fact is, they won't just turn up, because if you've not connected with what comes in the way of they being present for that workshop or the program or the orientation session that we were doing, it doesn't help. And we went backwards and we said, okay, how do we make sure that we talk to each of the participants? We understand, is there some problem in terms of their inability to make it to the center? Because we were paying for it. It's just that people still won't turn up. And focusing on failure modes constantly asks you to think, what can be done differently? What's the occurrence of that? If something fails, how do I make sure respond to it and fix the problem versus waiting for disaster, big program, lots of money put in from the donors, and then you don't get the desired results. So this is a very simple way to ask yourself what can go wrong, and then work backwards to say, proactively plan how to tackle it should it happen. And then the other technique that we use is a Japanese lean technique, which is Spokayoki. It's called mistake proofing. And Deming said that 85% of the reasons or failure to meet customer expectations are related to deficiencies in the systems and processes, and not the people. And role of all of us who are making those processes and working on operational excellence and strengthening the core of an organization is to make sure that these processes work well. Now, remember, if you are in an Excel sheet and it pops up and tells you that this formula is incorrect, or imagine this, you're writing an email and Google nowadays will start popping and saying, you're making a grammar error or the spelling is wrong. This is a way to mistake proof that the output quality is better. And as part of putting the measurement system, data collection templates for our NGOs together in these programs and projects that we've done, one example is, a simple example of, the spellings. How do you make sure that you are not letting people just type what they want to type, but specific things basis which you will do your analysis of data, make sure it's a list of value. And it's a very simple action. But imagine if your data is clean, your analysis will be far more useful in you realizing what is it that you can do differently. So these two techniques, when merged together with the other three that I was just talking about, can help you create processes and systems that are more sustainable, that are going to be far more mistake-proof than just going in and saying, okay, I'm going to have the best aircraft and I'm going to have the best crew that rides and flies this aircraft. But imagine if we land at the wrong airport, right? It's not going to help us. It's going to be really, really useful only when your best aircraft with the best crew lands at the right airport. And making sure you ask yourself what can go wrong is a step you to proactively figure out, how will I tackle if things go wrong? And are there actions and steps I can take that will avoid things going wrong? And that brings me to my last insight. And this is about, folks, we all will relate to this, that we have lots of problems to solve and lots of things to get distracted with. And in this generation of instant gratification, that message on Instagram and that notification on LinkedIn, and let me check my email, and oh, there is a phone call, is something that continuously distracts us from staying focused. And one of the techniques of creating process excellence and continuously and consistently delivering on things that matter to us is razor sharp, radical focus on prioritization of effort. It's like, if anything you do is not creating the results you want, then you have to be mindful of what can you do differently. And I can see two people have raised their hands. Give me 1 minute. I will just wrap this fifth insight, folks, and then I can quickly go in and start taking some of your questions. So I will invite the two folks who have raised their hands, and I can also take a look at the chat. I can see a bunch of messages coming my way. So folks, I'll just finish this one point. This is the last fifth insight of mine, and then we can go from there. And this insight is again supported with another project that we did for an NGO. This particular NGO invited us to work with them and saying, how do we improve student placement? So this NGO's focus was to upskill the students through their teachers and make sure that they become employable, right? All noble cause. And the intention was this, that we should move and scale from one state to the other state. We must have like 3x more teachers now, and all the good things have to happen. And again, all of the other insights that I've shared with you are interconnected, right? So they're not as if they are unique and universally done standalone. They're all completely connected with each other. And prioritization, Pareto principle, which says 20% of the causes typically impact 80% of the results. And in this particular project, when we were working with this NGO, we realized that if you want to go after student placement, you have to prioritize on the right things. And in this particular engagement that we were supporting, we identified which is the age group we want to go after. We were able to look at data and look at saying which are the courses which are giving us minimal impact in terms of building the excellence in the student about that concept. And we were able to then say, instead of trying to do everything for everyone, do few things, but do them so well that you get the results when it matters and where it matters. And the good news is this, that after our project with the team, we were able to improve, literally double the student placement after the year's effort that we were working with. And that's tremendous, right? It's not something that had to be a rocket science to figure out what are we supposed to go for. But when you look at your improvement agenda by keeping people at the core, by looking at what value means to them, by understanding what can go wrong, but most importantly, what are the value-adding tasks and enabling tasks that have to be considered and strung together well while measuring the right output at every stage, you will be able to transform for good. So 5 things. Think about value from the eyes of the end user. Make sure you measure the right things and go after areas where you think the performance is not meeting your expectations. Enable decision-making with transparent, visible measurement and action. Don't be deceived by symptoms. If a metric is showing you poor performance, it's a symptom. Dig deeper and ask 5 times why till you figure out the real root cause. That will really be the solution that you have to implement. So go after the root cause and not after the symptoms. What can go wrong, folks, will go wrong. So make sure that you're constantly asking yourself this question: what will I do if this step does not work? And become proactive in that journey. And lastly, stay focused, because prioritization will make all the difference in how you get results generated. So with that, I am probably, I'm looking at this girl, Sparsh, that's your name? So I'm looking at Sparsh. Sparsh, do I have 10 minutes to take some questions? I can go
you have 5 minutes more. Yeah,
I have
5 minutes.
Yes. Okay, I have 5 more minutes. So let's do this, folks. Let me first look at the chat and see if there are any questions in the chat that that I can do something about. Okay. Folks, we can figure out a way to get you the PPT. I'm assuming that the session is getting recorded. So if you listen to the recording, the slides will come handy to you. Oh, Nilanjana is in the group here. Nilanjana was one of the fellows that I had a privilege to mentor. Nilanjana did one amazing project. By the way, one of her projects was quoted as an example here today. So Nilanjana, thanks for being there.
Ms.
Okay.
Shalu, we received a question. Can I propose that?
Yes, please go ahead, Sparsh.
The question was how to avoid biases while establishing the measurement systems that may occur.
Fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. Um, See, human mind has biases because that makes us efficient. But at the same time, these biases come in the way of we making good decisions. So they can give us fast decisions, but sometimes force us to take bad fast decisions. So when it comes to measurement system and how do you avoid biases, there are a lot of techniques that can allow you to test the reliability, precision, and accuracy of your measurement system. And I will need 3 hours to teach you those, so I won't bore you with those details. But here's a behavioral side of the bias. I think any measurement system that can work well for you is made to help you understand what's working well and what is not working well so that you can take a decision. But it's built on the back of a very fundamental concept, which is psychological safety, to accept that something can go wrong. And when things go wrong, it is not bad intentions of people. It is an action which is collectively or singularly, for all we know, creating bad results. And our effort, as they say, hate the sin, not the sinner. Separate the person out of the process and say, why is it that this process is not meeting the performance standard that I would like to see? So remember the example I gave? You can measure how many hours a teacher is spending in the class. If you have a stop clock and the teacher is supposed to press on it every time they enter the class and press back when they get out of the class, you will get the hours. As long as the clock is the same clock every day and it is not changing every day, you'll have the same hours for every person entering and exiting from the class, as long as the action is right. So the measurement system could be right. However, once you collect that data, two things matter. Number one, making sure everybody who is part of that ecosystem is made aware that we will go after improving this process. We are not measuring to show people down. We are measuring to find out opportunities to be better. And betterment is always linked with human action. So which means, supposing I can be better, because remember the example, the teacher is being asked to do admin work. So for 6 hours in the day, all they do is that. So visibility to this data can allow us to approach the principal and say, why don't you hire an admin who will do this work for you? Let the teacher be in the class. But using good data then helps you take that decision. So giving that confidence that safety is there in highlighting poor performance, the courage, and every courageous action comes with vulnerability, folks. But again, it's the ecosystem. If you can inspire that there is not going to be an adverse impact on people because performance is poor, but there will be a concerted developmental supportive action to help you be better, I think that will make all the difference. I know, Sparsh, your timer is going off, so I won't keep going on, but I think there are a few more questions. Anything else that I can answer apart from this one question that you shared?
I think we can take up the questions and send them to you if that's okay, because we're running a little short on time. Yeah.
I am perfectly okay with that, Sparsh. Thank you so much for having me. And it is an absolute pleasure to be here and get a chance to share my learnings. I don't know how effective these learnings are in each and every circumstance or situation you all come from. But I can assure you, in my last 2 decades of working with professionals and last 5 years working with GSIF fellows, I have not found one chance where any of these 5 struggled because it was a social initiative and not a corporate business agenda. So they are pretty universal, easy to follow. You just have to be intentional about using it and don't be afraid of being a beginner. So thank you everyone for having me.